No one would choose you, her ex announced at the gala. The Alpha King lifted her hand and kissed it. The night was alive with whispers. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars from the towering ceilings of the Silverthorn Palace, casting fractured light across golden walls. The sound of laughter and polite conversation mingled with the soft clatter of glass, but beneath it all a current of tension ran through the grand hall like a hidden river. Every noble, every dignitary, every guest was watching. Every step was measured, every glance calculated. Elara adjusted the delicate folds of her silver gown, trying to steady her trembling hands. She had promised herself she would not come, not after what had happened the last time Kale humiliated her. Yet here she was, forced by the obligations of her family, stepping into a world that had never welcomed her with warmth. The grand mirror at the entrance reflected her pale face and dark hair, but in her eyes she saw not vanity, but a storm of fear and anger. The gala was not merely a celebration, it was a battlefield of power. Every gesture mattered, every word weighed like gold or lead. Nobles whispered alliances, secret messages flowed under smiles, and those who thought themselves clever laughed politely at jokes that masked threats. And there, in the center of the hall, was Kale. His smile was sharp, like a blade polished to perfection. He spotted her immediately. His gaze traveled over her, slow and deliberate, as if measuring her worth. Elara's stomach twisted, memories of his cruelty rising unbidden. "You should not have come," she whispered to herself. Her voice barely moved, lost beneath the music and chatter. But Kale did not need her voice. He had the confidence of one who knew the eyes of every guest were on him, ready for drama. With a charming bow to the crowd, he raised his glass and said, "Clear and cutting. Ah, Elara, still trying to fit in among the stars, I see. But let us not deceive ourselves. No one would ever choose you."
The hall froze for a heartbeat.
Conversations faltered mid-laugh. Some gasped, others turned to watch, curiosity shining in their eyes. Elara felt her heart constrict. Her cheeks burned, not only from the sting of humiliation, but from the cold familiarity of Kale's dominance over her. For a moment she wanted to run, to disappear into the shadows where no one could reach her. And then, a voice, smooth and commanding, cut through the tension like a blade of sunlight in winter. "Elara is not a choice for anyone to make," it said. The hall turned. All eyes fell on him, Ronan, the Alpha King. His presence was immense, even in the refined setting of a palace gala. Broad-shouldered, dark-haired, eyes like molten gold that seemed to see into the depths of a person's soul, he approached with the kind of confidence that made the air itself bend toward him. Nobles instinctively lowered their heads in respect, sensing the danger and allure wrapped into his being. He stopped before Elara. The heat of his gaze was both frightening and magnetic. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss upon it. The hall collectively inhaled, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Time seemed to still around Elara. The kiss was not casual. It was an assertion, a challenge and a promise, all wrapped into one motion. The warmth of his lips lingered, and a shiver ran down her spine. Her chest rose and fell with sudden rapidity, but she did not pull back. She could not. She felt as though she were standing at the edge of something vast, terrifying, and thrilling all at once. Kale's face twisted. Anger, surprise, and disbelief danced across his features. The crowd murmured, shifting uncomfortably. A few guests dared to glance at Ronan with awe, others with fear. "Alpha King," Kale began, but the words faltered. He had been so certain of his control, and now, in the same moment, it had been stripped away. Ronan's voice, low and rich, carried across the hall. "Do not speak of others' worth when you do not even understand your own."
Elara blinked, her mind reeling. She had never known anyone like him.
Not her ex, not her family, not the nobles who treated her with polite indifference. Ronan's presence demanded attention, demanded respect, and even in the briefest exchange it made her feel seen. truly seen. The orchestra played on, but now it seemed to carry a darker, more urgent note. The lights sparkled off her gown, and for the first time, she felt an unfamiliar surge of confidence. Perhaps Cale's words no longer held power over her. Perhaps she was not invisible. Yet, even as her pulse calmed slightly, a part of her could not ignore the danger. Ronan was a king, a ruler of creatures whispered about in hushed tones across the lands. His gaze promised protection, but also power beyond her understanding. Could she trust him? Should she trust him? The hall erupted into soft applause, not for Cale, but for the boldness of Ronan's gesture. Whispers spread like wildfire. The words Alpha King, choice and humiliation, weaved together into a tapestry of intrigue. Elara could feel their eyes on her, each one weighing her, each one judging her. Cale stormed away, muttering under his breath, his hand clenched tightly at his side, the gilded glass trembling slightly. He had underestimated her, and he had underestimated Ronan. The thought was a bitter one, and it darkened his features with an anger that would not soon fade. Ronan released her hand slowly, leaving a lingering warmth that seemed to radiate into her very core. Daignon. He inclined his head slightly, the faintest hint of a smile brushing his lips. "You need not answer him," he said softly, but with a weight that made every word echo. Elara's breath caught. She wanted to speak, to thank him, to ask why he had done this, but her voice faltered, trapped between fear and awe. Instead, she nodded slightly, letting her eyes meet his, and in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them, a spark of connection, fragile but undeniable. The gala continued, but the world had shifted for Elara. The chandeliers sparkled, the laughter carried on, yet she felt as though she were standing on the edge of something vast, a story that was just beginning to unfold. She could not yet know what was to come, only that her life had changed in the span of a single daring kiss. As she made her way to the refreshment table, trying to regain composure, she felt a sudden chill. The doors at the far end of the hall had opened, and a shadow flickered across the marble floor. Someone, or something, was watching her. She glanced toward it, but the figure had already vanished, leaving only a faint rustle of silk. Her pulse quickened. The night had only just begun, and already it promised danger, intrigue, and secrets yet to be revealed. She clutched her drink tightly, as though it could anchor her to reality, but even she knew that the real world, the one that mattered, was no longer the one she had known. Cale's words still echoed in her mind, but now they seemed weaker, fragile. No one could define her, not him, not anyone. She was hers to choose, and perhaps for the first time she realized that someone else had already chosen her, not for control, not for amusement, but for something deeper, something powerful. And somewhere in the shadows the Alpha King watched, his gaze never leaving her, as if he could sense the storm of magic, destiny, and longing swirling around her. The night was far from over, and already Elara felt it, the pull of a fate she could neither ignore nor escape. The palace corridors were quiet now, the echoes of the gala fading into the marble walls. Only the soft hiss of torches and the occasional clink of silver from distant servants broke the silence. Elara walked slowly, her mind still reeling from the events of the evening. The words of Cale, meant to wound, no longer had the same power. But the kiss, the Alpha King's kiss, pressed to her hand with such weight and warmth, lingered like a flame she could not extinguish. Her heart still beat too fast, yet it was not from fear alone. There was curiosity, too, a dangerous curiosity she did not understand. He was more than the story suggested, more than the titles, the fangs, the legends. He was real, and the force he carried made her feel both small and alive. Elara reached her chamber and closed the door behind her. She leaned against it, closing her eyes for a moment, trying to calm the storm in her chest. The gala was behind her, yet the weight of what had happened pressed heavily on her mind. She could not shake the feeling that this night was only the beginning of something far larger, far darker, and far more powerful than she had ever faced. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts.
Elara? A familiar voice called through the door. Who is it? She asked, cautious.
Ronan, the voice replied, calm and steady, yet carrying an authority that made her stomach twist. May I enter? Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the door. There he stood, his presence filling the small room, dark eyes glowing faintly under the torchlight. He was imposing, yet there was something in the way he looked at her. Curiosity, respect, and something unspoken, something that made her pulse jump. I wanted to speak with you, he said. His voice was low, deliberate, and carried a weight that made every word matter. The things Kale said, they were cruel, but they were not without reason. You are stronger than you realize, Elara, and yet the world has never been kind to you. Elara frowned, unsure of how to respond. Why are you telling me this? Why? Why do you care? He stepped closer, but not too close, maintaining a careful distance that made the tension between them electric. Because I see what others do not. I see your potential, and because there are forces moving against you that you cannot yet understand. Elara's brow furrowed. Forces? What do you mean? Ronan's gaze softened, though it remained intense. Your bloodline carries power, Elara. Ancient magic, tied to the old prophecies of this kingdom. That is why Kale attacked you tonight, not out of personal cruelty alone, but because those who wish to control this kingdom see you as a threat. Her heart thudded in her chest. Power. Magic. Prophecy. Words she had only heard in stories, whispered by the oldest nobles in the castle, now spoken directly to her. Could it be true? Could she truly be more than the girl Kale claimed no one would choose? I don't understand, she whispered. I am nothing special, just a noblewoman. Just me. Ronan shook his head slowly. You are more than that. And soon, you may need to be more. There are those who will come for you, who will use fear and deception to bend you to their will. If you are to survive, if you are to claim your place, you must embrace the strength you have always carried, even if you did not know it. Elara swallowed hard. The weight of his words pressed down on her, both frightening and thrilling. She wanted to believe him, but the idea of stepping into power, of facing unknown enemies, filled her with doubt. And yet, something inside her stirred, a spark she could not ignore. Ronan took a careful step closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. I am here to guide you, not to command, not to control, but to protect. To help you see yourself as the world cannot, until it is too late for them to stop you. She looked at him, searching his expression. There was no deception there, only determination. And perhaps something else, something warm, something that stirred her heart, even as it made her wary. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted, voice trembling.
You already are, he said simply, and the truth of it struck her like a sudden rush of wind.
The night passed in a blur. Ronan spoke of her lineage, of prophecies older than the palace itself, and of the subtle magic that ran through her veins. He did not reveal everything. Some truths were too dangerous, but enough to ignite a sense of purpose in her. Elara listened, absorbing each word, feeling her fear slowly turn into determination. Hours later, he finally left, bowing slightly before retreating into the shadows of the corridor. Sleep well, he said softly, though the weight behind the words made her feel as though they carried a promise, both of protection and of challenges yet to come. Elara remained awake long after he left. She thought about the kiss in the ballroom, the intensity in his eyes, the certainty in his voice. She could not deny that she had felt drawn to him, pulled in ways she did not fully understand. And yet, she reminded herself, this was a dangerous world. Kings, curses, and ancient magic did not mix with the hearts of ordinary people. She had to be careful. But even as she tried to steel herself, she could not ignore the pull she felt toward him. The following day, the palace seemed different. Whispers followed her through the halls. Servants and nobles alike glanced at her with curiosity, suspicion, or admiration. She realized that Ronan's bold gesture had changed something. The court saw her in a new light, not as a timid, overlooked noblewoman, but as someone powerful, someone with influence, and perhaps someone protected by the Alpha King himself. Cale had not vanished completely. He lingered at the edges of her vision, watching her with a mixture of anger and disbelief. His schemes were subtle now, masked behind polite smiles and calculated words, but she could sense the threat. He would not stop, not until he had regained the power he believed was rightfully his. Ronan, however, remained a constant, silent presence. Not always near, but always watching, always guiding in subtle ways. Elara could feel his influence, as if a protective force surrounded her, invisible but undeniable. It both comforted and frightened her. One evening she found herself wandering the palace gardens, seeking solitude. Moonlight spilled over the fountains and hedges, casting long shadows that danced across the stone paths. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of night-blooming flowers and something else, something wild, primal, and familiar. A figure stepped from the shadows. Ronan. He did not startle her. She had begun to expect him, to sense his presence even before he arrived. "You should not wander alone," he said, voice low, almost a growl beneath the calm. "Not when there are those who would see you harmed. I need space," she said quietly, her hands gripping the railing of the fountain. "Space to think. Space to understand." He nodded slowly, stepping closer but maintaining a respectful distance. "I understand. But know this. Space alone will not protect you. You must learn to trust not only others but yourself. And you must be ready for the challenges to come. Cale is clever, and he will not stop at mere words." Elara's heart tightened. She did not like the fear he spoke of, but she could not ignore the truth in his words. Cale's cruelty was not idle. It was only the beginning. They walked in silence for a while, the moon casting silver light across their path. The night felt alive, as if the stars themselves were aware of the destiny unfolding. Each glance between them carried weight, each movement charged with a tension that neither could ignore. Finally, Ronan stopped, turning to face her fully. "Elara," he said, voice soft but firm. "The world is changing around you. Forces that have slept for centuries are stirring. You cannot remain a bystander, and you will not face them alone. Not while I am here." Her pulse quickened. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, to deny the pull she felt toward him, but words failed her. Instead, she simply nodded, allowing the truth of his promise to sink in. But even as she felt a flicker of hope, a sense of foreboding lingered. The shadows of the palace seemed deeper now, the whispers sharper. Someone watched them, always just beyond sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. As they turned to leave the gardens, a sudden noise made them both pause. A faint rustle of silk, a whisper of movement too deliberate to be the wind. Elara's breath caught. Ronan's hand brushed hers, not quite touching, but enough to anchor her. His eyes narrowed, golden light glinting in the moonlight. "We are not alone," he said. A chill ran down her spine. The night, once so beautiful, now felt alive with unseen threats. And in that instant, Elara understood that her life had changed irrevocably. The gala, the kiss, the whispered promises, they were only the beginning. Someone was coming. And the game had truly begun. The castle was quieter than usual. The echoes of the gala and the whispered gossip of the court had faded, leaving behind long corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly into shadow. Yet for Elara, silence brought no comfort. Her thoughts swirled with questions about her bloodline, the prophecy Ronan had hinted at, and the shadowy figures that had watched her since the gala. She knew that knowledge alone would not be enough. She needed to understand the power she carried and the dangers that surrounded her. By the time the moon reached its zenith, Elara had found herself in the old wing of the palace where her ancestors had once lived. Dust covered the carved railings and faded portraits lined the walls, faces staring down with solemn authority. It was a place where secrets lingered in the air, like an unbroken spell, waiting for someone bold enough to awaken them. He paused in front of a large mirror, framed in intricate silver filigree, worn but still gleaming under the pale moonlight. It was an enchanted mirror, long rumored to reveal truths hidden from ordinary eyes. Hesitating, Elara reached out and touched a smooth surface. The glass shimmered and warped, and for a moment her reflection disappeared. Instead, she saw scenes that were not her own. A young girl, fearful and alone, hiding in a shadowed forest. A man, stern and powerful, standing over her, eyes filled with both anger and longing. And finally, a glimpse of herself, older, stronger, standing beside a figure whose golden eyes burned with an impossible intensity. Elara staggered back. The visions were fleeting, but they left a warmth in her chest and a sharp ache. Questions clawed at her. Who was the man in the vision? Why did she feel a connection to him she did not yet understand? And what was this power that had remained dormant inside her for so long? A sudden noise pulled her attention away from the mirror, a soft, deliberate step echoing down the corridor. She turned quickly, heart pounding, and saw a figure cloaked in shadow slipping between the pillars. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. The figure froze. Then, a low, familiar growl cut through the silence. Ronan emerged from the shadows, his golden eyes glinting in the dim light. He stepped closer, each movement precise, controlled, yet filled with a predatory grace that made her pulse quicken. "You shouldn't be alone here," he said, voice calm but laced with warning. "There are those who watch, waiting for weakness." "I need to understand," Elara replied, gesturing to the mirror. "I need to know why I feel different. Why I feel like there's something inside me I've never seen before." Ronan's gaze softened as he looked at her, but the intensity never faded. "The power you carry is older than this castle, stronger than many could imagine. And it is dangerous. Not because it is evil, but because others will try to claim it, to use it for their own gain." Elara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words settle over her.
And Kale? Is he involved?
Or is this something else? "Kale is not acting alone," Ronan said. He paused, studying her carefully. "He is being used by forces beyond his understanding. Forces that have slept for centuries, waiting for someone like you to awaken." Her stomach twisted. Forces? What kind of forces? Ronan looked away, his expression shadowed.
Those who guard the old magic?
Those who seek to control prophecy, and those who do not care what they destroy to achieve their goals. You must be careful, Elara. Every choice you make will have consequences, some you cannot yet see. Elara felt the weight of his words pressing down on her. The palace, once a place of comfort, now seemed a labyrinth of danger and secrets. Yet in the midst of fear, a strange resolve began to take root. If her power was real, if prophecy had chosen her, she would not be a pawn. She would stand, and she would face whatever came. Ronan reached out, lightly brushing her shoulder. The touch was gentle, almost comforting, yet it sent a shiver through her. "You do not have to face this alone," he said. "Not now, not ever. But you must be willing to trust. Trust yourself, and trust me." Elara's lips parted, a mix of doubt and longing in her gaze. She wanted to ask him more, to question everything he said, but she found herself unable to speak. Instead, she nodded, letting the truth of his promise settle around her like a shield. The next few days were a whirlwind. Elara began exploring the castle's hidden chambers and libraries, uncovering ancient texts and records of her family's lineage. She learned of a curse that had touched her ancestors, a shadow that lingered over their bloodline, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The more she learned, the clearer it became. Kale's cruelty was not just personal, it was a move in a larger, more dangerous game. During this time, Ronan continued to guide her, offering wisdom, protection, and quiet support. Their interactions were charged with unspoken tension, each glance and subtle gesture carrying more weight than words. He was patient, never rushing, yet always present, a constant reminder of the power and safety he represented. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon and the sky turned a deep violet, Elara ventured into the palace gardens again. The moonlight cast long shadows across the stone paths, and the air smelled of night-blooming flowers and earth. She paused at the edge of a fountain, lost in thought, when a faint rustle drew her attention. Ronan appeared from the shadows, his presence as commanding and unsettling as ever. "You are restless," he observed, his voice low. "I need to prepare," she replied. "I need to understand what I am, what I might become." He stepped closer, golden eyes studying her face. "The world will not wait for you to understand. It will move, and you must move with it. But first, you must embrace who you are. Power without understanding is dangerous, but understanding without courage is meaningless." Alara's heart tightened. His words were both a warning and a challenge. She realized then that this journey would not be simple. She would face dangers that would test her strength, her courage, and her heart. And yet, despite the fear, a spark of determination ignited within her. Suddenly the wind shifted, carrying a faint, eerie whisper that seemed to curl around her like a living thing. Elara's eyes widened as shadows moved unnaturally among the trees. She felt a prickling at the back of her neck, a warning of something unseen. Ronan's hand brushed hers again, this time with a sense of urgency. "They are close," he murmured. "Those who seek to use Kale's ambition for their own ends. We must leave. Now." Together they moved through the gardens with careful steps, shadows clinging to their movements. Elara's pulse raced, fear and adrenaline intertwining with a strange thrill she could not name. Each step brought her closer to understanding, yet also closer to danger. As they reached the edge of the garden, a figure stepped from the darkness. Cloaked and silent, the stranger's presence exuded a sense of ancient power. Elara froze, recognizing the danger immediately. Ronan's eyes narrowed, golden light flashing. "You should have stayed hidden," he said, voice low and sharp. The figure did not respond. Instead, the air seemed to grow colder, heavier, and the shadows stretched toward them like living things. Elara's stomach twisted with fear, yet she felt a strange pull, as if the presence of this stranger held answers she needed to see. Ronan moved to shield her, but the stranger raised a hand, and a pulse of energy rippled through the garden. The trees shivered, the fountain's water rippled unnaturally, and Elara felt a strange force tugging at her very essence. "You carry the blood of prophecy," the stranger said, voice echoing like a chorus of whispers, "and those who would claim it are stirring. Your choices will decide the fate of many, perhaps the fate of the kingdom itself." Elara's heart pounded. She glanced at Ronan, whose face was calm but intense, golden eyes locked on the stranger. "Who are you?" she asked, voice steady despite the fear curling in her chest. The figure's hood shifted, revealing a glimmer of silver hair and eyes that seemed older than time itself. "I am one who watches, one who guides, and one who tests. Your journey is only beginning, Elara. The shadows of the past are stirring, and you must face them before they consume you." Before she could speak again, the figure vanished, leaving only a faint echo and the whisper of ancient magic in the air. Elara's knees weakened, and Ronan caught her gently, his hand steadying her. "This is real," he said quietly. "More real than anything you have faced before. But do not fear. You are not alone." She looked up at him, seeing not just strength and protection, but a fierce determination that matched her own growing resolve. "Then I will face it," she said, voice steadying. "I will face whatever comes. I want to understand. I want to fight." Ronan nodded, a hint of pride and something deeper flickering in his golden eyes. "Good. That is the first step. But remember, Elara, the shadows do not wait. And neither can we." Together they turned back toward the castle, the night alive with secrets, magic, and the faint whisper of danger. Elara felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She was no longer the girl Kale had tried to diminish. She was something more, stronger, wiser, and perhaps, with Ronan by her side, unstoppable. Yet as they approached the gates, a faint rustling came from the trees behind them. Someone, or something, was following, watching, waiting. And in that instant, Elara knew with chilling certainty the shadows of the past were not done with her yet. The Silverthorn Castle shimmered under the rare light of the midnight eclipse. A blood-red moon hung in the sky, casting an eerie glow across the towers and courtyards. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, and the wind carried a strange energy that made even the bravest guards uneasy. Tonight was not just another night in the kingdom. It was a night that promised change, a night when secrets long buried could awaken. Elara stood in the throne room, the air thick with anticipation. Her silver gown reflected the strange red light, making her appear almost otherworldly. She had spent the days since the garden encounter training, learning to harness the subtle power within her veins. Ronan had guided her with patience, teaching her to control her fear, focus her strength, and embrace the magic that ran through her blood. Yet, despite the progress she had made, she could not escape the tension that filled the room. Kale had returned, not quietly, not with discretion, but with the full force of arrogance and menace. He had challenged her publicly once more, and the entire court had gathered to witness the confrontation. Nobles whispered among themselves, some in admiration of her courage, others in doubt of her ability to withstand the Alpha King's warning, and Kale's cunning. Kale stepped forward, his cloak flowing like liquid shadow. His eyes gleamed with malice, and a cruel smile curved his lips.
Elara, he said, voice loud enough to carry through the hall. Still pretending you are worthy of attention?
Still hoping that someone might choose you? The courtiers gasped, and a ripple of murmurs ran through the room. Elara felt her pulse quicken, but she stood tall. No longer would she let Kale define her. No longer would she tremble under the weight of his arrogance. She had learned something the past few days. Strength was not just about power. It was about courage, heart, and conviction. Ronan stepped beside her, towering and imposing. His golden eyes scanned the crowd, then settled on Kale. He did not speak immediately. Instead, his presence alone seemed to command silence, forcing the nobles to pause, holding their breath in awe. "Elara," Kyle sneered, "do you even know who you are? Or are you content to be nothing more than a pawn in the games of others?" She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze directly. "I know exactly who I am," she said, her voice steady. "And I am no one's pawn. Not yours. Not anyone's." A murmur ran through the court. For the first time, many saw her not as timid or overlooked, but as someone who possessed dignity, courage, and a spark of power that demanded respect. Kale's expression darkened. He had not anticipated resistance. Not like this. Not from her. And yet, he was clever. And cleverness could be dangerous when combined with ambition. He took a step closer, lowering his voice to a tone meant only for her ears. "You will regret this, Elara," he said, and a chill ran through the hall. "You cannot escape what is coming." Before she could reply, Ronan's voice cut through the tension, smooth and commanding. "KL," he said, eyes glowing faintly in the red eclipse light, "your arrogance blinds you. You see only what you want, and not what is real. Leave her be, or face the consequences." Kale's lips curled into a bitter smile. "Consequences? You speak of consequences, Alpha King. Yet you cannot control everything." Ronan's golden eyes flared. In an instant, the room felt charged, the very air trembling with the quiet roar of power. He did not need to raise his voice. His presence was a warning, a force that demanded attention. Nobles shifted uneasily, realizing that the Alpha King was not one to threaten lightly. Elara felt a sudden surge of energy from within her. The lessons Ronan had taught her over the past days clicked into place. The blood of her ancestors, long dormant, pulsed with life, a rhythm that resonated with the eclipse above. He took a deep breath, feeling a warmth spread through her limbs, a sense of clarity she had never known before.
I am not afraid, she said, voice ringing clear across the hall. And I will not let fear define me.
Kale, you do not control me, nor will anyone else. Ronan's hand brushed hers lightly, a subtle anchor that reminded her she was not alone. Their bond, though unspoken, strengthened her resolve. Together, they were formidable, not because they sought dominance, but because they had courage and unity. Kale's eyes narrowed. He knew he had underestimated her, and he knew that his usual tricks would not work. Anger flashed across his face, but before he could strike, the hall shifted. Shadows gathered unnaturally, curling around the corners of the room like living smoke. The ancient magic of the castle responded to the eclipse, and Alara felt it stir within her. Ronan's gaze turned to her, sharp and protective. Focus, Alara, he instructed. Do not let him or this darkness distract you. Alara closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The power within her pulsed like a heartbeat, connecting her to the castle, to the bloodline she had once thought meaningless. She opened her eyes, and the air around her seemed to shimmer. The shadows that had been creeping forward froze in place, held back by an invisible force. Kale stumbled slightly, caught off guard. What is this? He whispered, fear threading his voice. This is who I am, Alara said, voice strong. Not your victim, not your pawn. Me. The eclipse reached its peak, casting the throne room in deep crimson light. Alara felt herself aligned with the power of her ancestors, the magic responding to her will. She extended her hand slightly, and the shadows recoiled as though recognizing her authority. Nobles watched in awe, whispers of prophecy and power filling the air. Kale's face drained of color. He had relied on fear, on manipulation, on her supposed weakness. But none of it worked tonight. She had risen beyond the limitations he had imposed, and the cost of underestimating her became clear. Ronan moved closer, gently placing his hand over hers. The contact sent warmth through her, grounding her, enhancing her control. Together, they were a force of will, and the hall seemed to bow to their combined presence. You are strong, Alara, Ronan said softly, his golden eyes locked on hers. Do not doubt yourself. Not now, not ever. She nodded, a surge of gratitude and something deeper filling her chest. The tension between them, once subtle, now carried a weight of shared purpose, trust, and unspoken longing. Kale, realizing his defeat, turned sharply and fled toward the castle doors, his cloak trailing behind him. But as he reached the threshold, a shadow flickered in his path. He faltered, a scream caught in his throat, and then he vanished into the darkness outside. The courtiers gasped, unsure whether he had escaped or been consumed by forces beyond their understanding. Ronan released her hands but kept his gaze on the door. He will return, he said quietly, almost to himself. And next time, he may not be alone. Alara's chest heaved, her heart pounding with adrenaline and triumph. She had faced the first test, embraced her power, and stood beside the Alpha King as an equal. Not as a frightened girl, but as a force in her own right. Yet even as she felt victory, a new awareness settled over her. The prophecy, the magic, the shadowy forces at play, they were far from over. Kale's defeat tonight had been a single battle, not the war, and as the eclipse waned, casting the room in normal moonlight once more, Alara knew the true challenges were yet to come. Ronan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Tonight you stood strong, but strength alone will not be enough. You will need courage, wisdom, and trust. And perhaps a heart that can endure even when the world turns against you. Alara met his gaze, the crimson light lingering in her vision. Then I will be ready, she said, voice steady. I will face whatever comes. He nodded, a hint of pride softening his stern features. Yet there was something in his eyes, a flicker of warning, of premonition, that made her shiver. Outside the castle walls, in the deepest shadows of the forest. A pair of eyes gleamed with cold calculation. Kael had not returned alone. Whispers of dark magic, older and more potent than anything Elara had yet encountered, stirred in the night. And in that moment the world seemed to hold its breath. The next battle, the next test, was coming, and neither Elara nor Ronan could fully prepare for what awaited.